Hi, everybody. This is John Hayes and my buddy David Kaiser, and welcome to our first episode of Stuff Men Need to Talk About. We're happy that you're here to listen to two old guys just really chat with each other. Um, the reason that we started doing this is really to have an open and honest discussion about stuff men need to talk about. Dave and myself are longtime friends, getting older, getting a little gray, long in the tooth, as they say. And we find that as we now live in different towns, we don't spend enough time really chatting. And it's good to have a friend that you can bounce things off of, not just ideas and concepts, but also your troubles, and it's as you get older, sometimes those friends are fewer and far between. You lose them as you go, I suppose. But that's really the concept here. Our hope is that this kind of helps us navigate, the challenges in our lives. It's, a lot of time is spent texting back and forth and doing those things. But it's a lot better to have an open and honest conversation when you can actually see someone. And I know that we're not sitting across the table or having a cup of coffee or even a Jameson for that matter. Um, I think this opens a door for a lot of stuff for us. And hopefully, it'll provide some benefit to you too. I think that one of Dave's hot buttons in his life is he likes to, be there for other people. He's got a strong sense of charity, and as we discuss this, I think it felt good for me, and I think it probably is good for Dave. And I'll let you address it, Dave. That maybe others will be able to not only relate to the stories that we have and our challenges and our discussions, but hopefully it helps them as well. And I think that we'll also be happy to take some um, topics and talk about those if people want to hear those as well. More than happy to do that. We're not professionals by any stretch of the imagination. We're just two old guys with some life experience. Um, Dave, please weigh in.
Yeah, you got to quit calling us old guys. You're the old guy. I'm young, but
You're more gray than me, buddy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This is exactly like I feel like it's something I've gotten that I've started to realize. I've gotten older is my parents have passed away. I don't necessarily have the outlets that I used to have for talking things through a lot of times. And I think when we started to discuss this idea, one of the things that I had kind of just bounced around in my head is that we get into certain parts of our life or certain phases of our lives, and we feel like I think we a lot of times feel like we don't really have anyone that we can talk to about things, and especially some things are really difficult to talk about. Hard to be honest and open. I think I know I come from a generation where a lot of times you didn't talk about your weaknesses or your insecurities, your problems, and I think that's a terrible I think that's a terrible way of doing things.
I think also that you realize, and I've been married for a very long time, and you have as well. You realize that there's some things you just can't talk about with your with your wife. That they may cause some consternation in the relationship, even if they're just small items. That they build up over time. Whereas with your buddies, you can have these conversations, and we have this built-in thing at home, but a lot of times you can't. You want to have discussions, but sometimes you just can't. And here we are, and we can have discussions about stuff that maybe they know nothing about. And I would think that being a 56-year-old man, my wife probably doesn't know very much about that other than, just watching me mope around the house.
Well, I also think it's one of those things like I'm not a big believer. Like I don't like unloading, uh, you know, unloading on them for every damn thing that you go through.
Why do you
I
unload on
certainly,
me?
yeah. Well, some things anyway. Like I can unload on things that that you've got the context to understand. Things that make sense. Hey, you ever notice, it's a good conversation when I had the other day, and this is not one that would make sense to any woman. It's like, you ever notice it takes longer and longer to shake as you get older? And to the point that it's starting to become, maybe it's not shaking anymore. Maybe I'm enjoying it a little bit too much at this point. But there are weird little things that come with being an older guy, and
And who would you ask, right? You couldn't just
yeah.
ask a guy on the street. I mean, it puts you in jail for that sort of thing.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I actually, at one point, a couple of years ago, I suffer from seasonal affective depression. I know you've had to listen to me groan about that for years now. Winter times it can get really, really brutal. And then a couple of years ago, I started going to a psychologist, really, really great. And I specifically looked for, I want an older male. I want a guy my father's age, or grandfather age, because I need somebody that I can just validate shit through. I need somebody that he can go, hey, listen, I've been where you're at. You're doing fine. I just need that someone that had that experience and that objective, and he had already been through those steps of his life. And I found it to be really, 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 really useful in a lot of ways. It was, you know,
You're saying that you believe that that there are definite benefits to having going to see a professional.
well, I
You
mean,
see benefit in that?
well, in that case, it was. I don't know that it was. It turned into, and honestly, it turned into more of a friendship than anything else. To the point where I almost got where I like this guy too much. I don't think I could really tell him some of the really difficult stuff.
Yeah, I don't think
At
it's
this
supposed to
point,
work that way,
yeah,
right?
it's not. And I was like, I certainly don't want to. I had developed an affection, for the guy, and a really, really great, great doctor, and just a wonderful human being. Just overall, I had a huge amount of respect for him. Um, but then at a certain point, also, I kind of realized it's like there's enough of a difference in our ages that I don't think that there's things that he's going to be able to understand. He's a different generation, a completely different
I mean,
generation.
you said it was, you wanted someone like your father or your grandfather. You do know at your age that your grandfather would be, you'd have to go to the graveyard to talk to that guy as old as you are.
Oh,
So,
for God's
yeah,
sakes. Yeah, yeah.
you're overshooting there. Don't do that. Go for someone your dad's age.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Yeah,
You're welcome.
and so the idea being that this was a good forum. Me and you talk a lot. We talk, and I think we've known each other for 15 years at this point. And we it's good to have someone that you can open up with about things that you experience and the ways you process things. I just like the fact that I have someone I can say, "Hey, take a listen to this work situation. Tell me the way you would process this if someone approached you for this, or whatever, even a conversation that you might have."
Right.
And
And I think it's important for folks to know that on the scale of personalities, we're pretty different, but alike in so many ways in how we arrive at the final answer. And we tend to arrive there, but we are different, and that's gonna should make for some pretty good conversations because we tend to, wouldn't say we argue too much, but we have different perspectives, but it always seems to end with us at least coming back to the same conclusion. So I think it might be interesting. The dynamic, I think, is what I'm saying. It's probably going to be pretty interesting to watch. At least I hope it comes across well, and through this video series or whatever this thing is that we're doing.
yeah, on that topic, tell me a little bit, so people will get an understanding. They understand the perspectives that we're coming from. Tell me a little bit about your background so we can kind of establish what you are.
What I am, that's nice. What a way to say that, jerk. I I am 56, born in 1969. I've been around a while, it appears. And we were talking about it the other day. It's very difficult to rationalize how far 1988 was, for instance, how many years ago that was. I mean, high school seems like yesterday. I hope that's the same for everyone because in many ways I still feel like a kid. But I was born in Williamsburg, Virginia, and grew up in Middlesex, Virginia. I was adopted, so I was put up for adoption as a baby. Um, and we can tell that story later on. I think it's a good story. Adopted by older parents. which definitely had an impact on my life as I look back on it, which is another thing that I think that we want to talk about here on the show is we want to identify things that we think were trigger points and how they affected us for good or bad. So I was adopted by older parents, and my father, my adopted father, actually died when I was 13. So that created quite a gap for me for male role models as a child. Um, Very poor. Um, Went through the high school years on free and reduced lunch, which is traumatic for a kid. I remember actually we were watching YouTube a few minutes ago and watching a video on government cheese. I don't know if anybody's ever had to live through that. I didn't find that very traumatic, but we actually did get the government cheese. If anybody's done it, it comes in a block about this big and it's in a cardboard box and it is a thing or was a thing. But I hated being poor. I hated it. I just, I had friends who I thought were rich, and looking back on it, I'm sure nobody was really. I mean, it's perspective, right? And but that perspective um, patterned my life, and it made a big difference in where I am today. Graduated Middlesex High School, 1988. Went into the Marine Corps. That was probably the biggest. Um, it was the biggest step in my life, and probably the most important. It created a moral set that kind of you gain that as a child. As a child, I was brought up Baptist or Christian. You gain, your moral compass through Sunday school and church and those things, and certainly had that. But losing a father early on, the Marine Corps was very good for me, and it also springboarded, probably a better term, from not, just a high school education into electronics, and then from electronics in the Marine Corps, getting out of the Marine Corps, getting into robotics, selling robotics, building and then selling, and then company management, those sorts of things. The roles changed over time, from building to management, and then vice president, director roles. Um, the period where I moved from Middlesex to other places and then ended up back here and where I'm at now, which is Charlotte, North Carolina. And I ended up buying a music venue. So I owned the Tremont Music Hall for a few years. Another very positive experience, but also um, patterned a lot of things in my life because of that. A lot of things I learned, and I think looking back on it, I learned why I did it. I think I know why I did it is more for wanting to be a part of something than maybe wanting to own a business, but it worked out. It was a great experience. And still in robotics even when I owned that, and just up until probably 19 or 2025, I retired. So I'm lucky enough to be able to retire at 55, 56 years old. Well, I say retired, but I was actually fired. So it was the second time in my life that I was fired. I hate to think that I've always thought that it was a stigma, but I'll be honest with you, it was the best thing. Both of those firings were the best things that's ever happened to me. And you don't know that at the time. Looking back, it's obvious, but you don't know it at the time. This last one I knew was coming because I deserved it, and we'll talk about that story maybe as we go forward. Hopefully, I won't get sued for it, but we'll maybe talk about it as we go. And I've been lucky enough to be blessed with my training in the Marine Corps and uh, what I learned to be able to use it and be self-sufficient. So I'm very lucky. I am married, been married for 28 years. My wife still works. So I guess at this point, and you can look at me and tell that I'm a sugar daddy or I have a sugar mama. Yeah, I'm not a sugar daddy. I don't make any money. My wife does, I have a sugar mama. That's great. Yeah. So things are going well. I'm happy that in my life. However, it's like you stated earlier, we all have those days, weeks, months. You seem to have blacker, longer periods than I do. I just try to be here for you when you do. The seasonal thing is a bunch of fruit ha bullshit that you hit me with every year. That's a bunch of gunk. I don't believe it. Of course, I'm kidding. I know that it happens. I've seen you go through it. But I've been blessed. Everything there's been a bunch of downturns in my life, but it seems like every time I come out, and I think that with age, you just tend to, you either see the bad or you see the good, and every bad has created a good or an opportunity for good, and I'm just happy. And that's part of why I'm here is I wanna maybe tell the story and have other people know that, hell, if a kid from Middlesex, Virginia can, I don't know, retire at 55 or 56, then hell, you can too. I didn't have anything special other than, maybe the being a white kid. I don't know, maybe that's a special thing, who knows? But I was poor and didn't have any of the, um, money that other kids had to have that kickstart. And that's me in a nutshell. So tell me a little bit about you. I'm sure everybody wants to hear your story too. Tell me where tell us how you got here,
So I am a resident of was a resident of Union County, born in Stallings.
which is where
Actually,
I live now, by the way,
yeah,
Union County.
I was born in actually Presbyterian Hospital, which is now I think Novant Presbyterian, Uptown Charlotte. 1973. I'm 52 now. Um, I went to school in Union County. Grew up. My parents were. You talk about being poor. We were always considered us poor, though. I think in retrospect, we weren't poor. I think by a lot of people's definition. I mean, my dad was a truck driver, and my mom worked intermittently. She was a receptionist and secretary, and did various office work, and later was in the insurance industry. But we we always they always said we were poor. But being poor for us, we always had a roof over our head. The bills got paid. I never went without food. I didn't get to have the members only jacket. I don't think I ever got a new toy in my entire life. All my toys came from yard sales, and it was one of those things where there's a stigma associated. When I was a kid, I was kind of mortified by that. I'll never forget like that, those middle school years where those, hey, everybody else is getting Reeboks, and nope, you ain't getting no Reeboks. We're not paying $60 for a pair of shoes. You get whatever we can find at the help center. Though I don't want to say it was terrible, but growing up, I always had the impression that we were poor, but in reality, I don't think we were. I think we were just very frugal. Um, Went to college. I had started my whole life I wanted to be a scientist. I was always fascinated with the sciences, physics, astronomy. Um, I had my original plan was to be a physicist. What I always wanted to do, I wanted to go to MIT, be a high energy physicist. Um, Ended up dropping out of college after about a year when I was in high school. I grew my hair out and started playing guitar and became obsessed with music. Though it never obsessed me to the point that I thought I was going to be a rock star. Well, I mean, I think we all thought we were going to be rock stars at some point. And especially when you started playing music and playing on a stage in front of people. And I did start doing that in my really early years. Um, but it was never enough to kind of detract me like fully from what I really wanted to do, and that was academia. And I ended up dropping out of school, moving down to Myrtle Beach, getting a couple of years education in the School of Hard Knocks, and kind of saw what actually being poor was like. So it was, going down and living in a like I don't know if you've ever been in these tourist towns in the wintertime. They are third world countries. No jobs whatsoever. Pretty much everybody works two jobs all through the summer and the fall, saves up enough money so that they can make it through the winter, and pretty much everybody just stayed stoned and drunk, through the entire winter. So it was, I had a couple of years of learning to have that really kind of odd lifestyle. Decided I hated it. I hated the insecurity. I was terrified of the idea of being poor. After actually, I remember I have some really good stories of me and my roommate going through the couch to scrounge together money to buy packs of hot dogs and beef or bean burritos from Winn-Dixie at the time. And I have a really good story. I want to get my buddy Mike on here one time, but we were watching. There was an Energizer commercial that came on at the time. It had Ted Nugent in it, and it was for some fictional, we didn't know it was fictional, taco restaurant called Taco Loco. For like $10, you could get like 20, tacos, 10 burritos, something else. And we literally were making plans before the end of the commercial to drive to wherever the nearest location was and stocking up and freezing as much of this shit as we could to be able to feed ourselves through the winter. So um, that being said, I ended up going back to college after a couple of years of that. It helped really helped me decide what I wanted to do. I kept doing the band thing. I played in bands. I played in a band called Aces and Eights down at Myrtle Beach, and a couple of projects here and there, and um, came back, went back to college, graduated with my undergraduates in physics and applied mathematics, and then was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to get a job in physics at the time. So I decided to do comp sci as a backup plan because it was the late 90s and the computer industry was booming at the time. It was the dot-com boom. So decided, computers will be a good, it'll be a good backup strategy. So um, did that, and that turned into immediately, a very successful career. I'd opened up a computer company. I owned a computer company for about 3 years. Me and a few friends in school started a company called Alchemy Computer Innovations, and we did, built custom computers, programming projects, small business networks, did a little bit of everything, some web development projects. We did web hosting. I had some servers that were sitting up a colo in downtown Charlotte and did that, but then got an offer from IBM. So I went to work for IBM. Um, from IBM, I ended up in the financial industry. I went to work for the Vanguard Group, uh, which is where I met a bunch of musicians who had been or IT guys. Apparently, IT is like chock full of people that used to play in bands. So, started up a buddy band, and that kind of turned into a buddy band, turned into a gigging band called No One You Know. It played around Charlotte. We used to play shows with Ace from the Ace and TJ show. We used to do shows for Charity Case and a lot of benefit stuff. And from that, I ended up in the music business because we started a music magazine. I met Jeff Lowry, who had owned the Pterodactyl Club, and we started up a music magazine called Amps 11. And from that, I ended up meeting a lot of people. I ended up becoming part owner in Amos's South End. And then Amos's South End turned into us buying the music farm in Charleston. And then from that, I ended up buying the money in Rock Hill. And that's about the time where me and you met. I had decided I wanted to run one all myself. It just kind of similar to you. I'd never planned on giving up my career as an engineer. I was a musician that wanted to have my own club. It was that simple. I wanted to have a clubhouse. I wanted a place that me and my friends could go and play on our own stage where we could, and really I had kind of an idea of, I wanted to build the stage that every musician would want to play on. I wanted to, so we put a lot of effort into, creating a really good sound. We had a really fantastic sound system. We really tried to cater to the other musicians, being that all of us were musicians that were involved, me and pretty much the whole staff. And really, really long, drawn out story with that. But sold that club and got out of that business around 2015. Moved to the Raleigh area. Moved from Charlotte to Raleigh. Went to work for Citrix, and I'm in healthcare. I'm a cloud architect in healthcare, but I'm not retired yet. I probably will be. I'm targeting the same time you retired. I got a 16-year-old son. I want to see what his college is going to look like before I tap out. So it'll depend on if he decides he wants to go to community college, or if he decides he wants to go to Yale. We'll see. So I figure, it'd be smart. I'll just go ahead and keep working until I know what those numbers are going to look like. And then I'm tapping out and I'm going to drink and fish all day. So
Sounds like a plan. You left out whether you're married or not. You have a kid, but you didn't say you were married. When did you get married?
2001, 2001, no, 2003. Um,
You've been
uh,
married a long time as well.
yeah, married pretty much, I want to say high school, not my high school, love, but I met her actually in Myrtle Beach. We met, I was 19
You
years
were poor
old.
and eating burritos.
I was. She liked me when I was. She actually liked me when I was poor. So that's a keeper right there.
Uh,
But
Set expectations low. It makes it easy to,
and we had a very interesting ride. We had our ups and downs. We separated a couple of times, and just always ended up splitting up and crashing back together, and splitting up and crashing back together. And then my son was born, and after that it was okay. The game has changed now, and
I'm
so
sure.
and I find that's what really helped me to like bring everything together for myself. Becoming a
Gotcha.
father was what really changed everything for me.
So we've painted a pretty broad picture of who we are and what we've done. Um, I think that the go forward here would be to kind of dissect a few of these things to understand what makes us, who we are and why we act the way that we do. Um, so, for instance, the music venues, there's tons and tons of stories with the music venues that probably not so much about who we are, what we did, but just some really cool stories. And maybe we'll have some local musicians or maybe even some national musicians on. We'll see. Um, we've also talked about topics ranging from our fathers and our mothers. I think one of the most interesting ones that we've been discussing was a topic of um, do our mothers actually mess us up more than our fathers? Um, I think that's a fantastic topic to talk about because I think our mothers kind of parallel each other in some ways. But there's a lot of topics. There's a lot of things that we'd like to discuss, mostly for our benefit, because it's good to really unwind this stuff in your mind by saying it out loud and then letting someone like a good friend who is going to be brutally honest, but still not bruise you in any significant fashion. I know that Dave wouldn't purposely hurt me. What a dummy I am. I'm just kidding. But it's good to have those types have the ability to have these types of conversations, and that's really our go forward. And our hope is that I'm not putting words in your mouth. My hope is that these will help other people. And also, I mean, it's not just going to be about woe is me and how bad things are. My life has really turned out great, but I mean, we can talk about the music business. We can talk about what we did yesterday. Love to have the audience chime in. I think there's going to be, depending on who finds this channel, there'll be a lot of questions about the music venue and those sorts of things. I'd be happy to talk about. I'm sure you would too. Maybe talk about guitars. I've got a bunch on the wall here. You don't have you're filming this from a cave, so people can't see all the music gear behind you, but there's a bunch behind you as well. Happy to talk about music and guitars. It's one of those things I have passions for. Um, those things, motorcycles, guns, guitars. I love those sorts of things, so it'd be good to talk about those things.
Yeah.
Dave,
Yeah.
tell us what you've got.
No, and I agree. I think that there's a host of topics that we can go through. There's certainly good stories from from the club days, and from the business aspect of music, and from my band days, and my experiences and whatnot. But yeah, like you, the idea behind this originally was I'm a big believer in trying to do some type of service. I used to be very involved with doing food banks. I used to run a lot of the charity events when I worked at Vanguard for most of the Christmas events and the food drives. And that was something that always gave me an immense amount of happiness, was feeling like I was doing something for someone else. I didn't feel like my career did anything particularly of real value from a social perspective, but I felt like the things that I could do outside of that, the things that actually touched people's lives, those are the ones that really mattered to me. And the idea behind this originally, when John and I had discussed this, was this is an opportunity for maybe we'll be able to be able to touch on things that'll help other people be able to gain clarity and perspective on struggles they may have in their own life. Because I think we're both very honest people about the way we discuss things. We probably would discuss things that a lot of people might not openly discuss, and hopefully that will help people be able to find insight in their own lives if you run across something similar. And I'm hoping that we can engage and foster, engagement through, Discord channel and Facebook pages, places where you can tell us what you want to hear about, what you if you have questions or if you have a story you want to contribute. I think this would be a great vehicle and this would be cathartic for me. I've said over the years, the ability to be able to, it's like opening a wound up. Sometimes you have to open the wound up to let it bleed a bit. I think maybe it's not a great analogy, but I think that's something that's good for me. I always find that I get relief when I talk things out. And that's where having a friend like John has been fantastic, because it's given me that opportunity to be able to have someone that I can bounce ideas off of, or even difficult questions. So hopefully this will be something good for everyone involved, and we see what we can make of it.
Well, let's hope for the best. As always, I guess you hear this in every video. I don't know what this means, but please like and subscribe. I don't care if you like it, just subscribe. That'll at least tell us if that people are watching. That would be great. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again, everybody.